bring this meeting to order for the Rural Authority Board meeting of March 27th. I guess we'll call roll call first.
Sure. Lori Baldwin Sands.
Present.
Frank Burrs.
Present.
Jim Herbert.
Present.
Grant Jones. Sharon McMillan.
Present.
Todd Noble.
Present.
Jerry Pribble sends regrets. Sam Trousseau.
Sam. Sam, he's not.
He might be there.
Sam Trousseau. I don't see him
Will you
online.
speak up, Sam?
John Wilson.
Present.
Oh, there's John. Very good.
So, Mr. Chair, we have quorum, and because no one is joining virtual, I would suggest we can forego the roll call for the votes. If that's the will of the board,
Let's Sam shows up.
unless Sam shows up.
Perfect. That works. How do you video?
Yes. So before we start the meeting, Kettle Creek Conservation Authority wishes to acknowledge the treaty and traditional lands originally occupied by the Indigenous First Nation peoples of the Anishinaabe, Ottawa-Durant, and Haudenosaunee nations. KCCA strives to build meaningful relationships with Indigenous communities and recognizes the importance of respecting these treaties and lands. This meeting is being video recorded as per the notice that was on the screen prior to the meeting start.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, is there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Not seeing any. First item up is delegations. We have Jeremy Brown from the London Canine Association here with a request from Dan Patterson now, please. Welcome, Jerry.
I would drive something there too.
Well, good morning. My name is Jeremy Brown, president of the London Canine Association, and some books there. London Canine Association is a dog club, like you watch on TV, Westminster Confirmation. At this particular show, we had Dan Patterson. We sponsored youth. There's a Hannon, which CKP has scholarships for. We have Good Neighbor Club, and which is the public is invited to. We hand out flyers at the Loblaws and stuff. I myself, I'm an international judge. I travel all over the world judging dogs. I also own some companies and stuff. So we have a farm somewhere in Yarmouth Center Road, so we're locals. I just want to start. We've been here, we had a lease for 5 years. We were here, we worked with Scott Bonnell, excellent to work with. Wanted our business, I guess you'd say, which worked out really good. So we came up for renewal. I think there's some things that maybe somebody doesn't know. I'm not sure. We rented the place for the last 5 years. I believe the price was on $18.95. We acquired an extra day, so we knew that there was going to be some kind of an increase. Is what we had. One of the things that I wanted to do, and I think in the booklet you'll see, we run a real professional show. When I do this thing, I want it to be done right. One of the things that we have is the cabin. We do a lot of flowers and stuff. We have them. These pictures are advertised all over the world. At the Dan Patterson, people advertise their dogs and their wings. It's a high end deal. We had an agreement. That's tentative, but it wasn't done through council, I think, but we had I talked to Scott before and I said, we need to have some kind of futuristic plans of what we're doing. We know we got an extra day. What am I gonna kick to my board as far as what the increase is gonna be? In that letter, it shows the increase. Not that this is approved by the board, but it gives me an idea where we're going. And the current agreement that we had, current meaning, not 5 years, into 5 years, was about $1,800 a day or $360 or $360 per day. But there was a potential increase of $40. That's achievable. We can do that. And then we have a big tent that we put up. Now the tents, we can get out A&B rentals out of London. They cost us about $6,000. I have a deposit on that because you have to, July is a wedding season. So you got to make sure you secure those tents and stuff. So we do that. And that money's already there waiting. So that incorporates some of the London and our kennel club members, we got retired school teachers, radio, we got a guy who's got a morning show in London, retired nurses. So, you know, we're kind of professionals in our own way. So I myself, when we go here, as far as our costs are fixed to this place, when we're running the show, we supply all the porta toilets. We supply the dump sites. I hire we have people come in and pick the garbage somehow, so there's no cost to the Kettle Creek. I have a hired man, he comes and works over the weekend, brings a tractor, because our farm's just in here on the center road. So we keep everything clean all the time, that's real important to me. I personally roll the grounds here where the dog show is gonna be. The show, I'm judged all over the world. This show here has the potential of being huge because they look after stuff. The grounds are excellent. Well, when we had our original rental agreement, we incorporated the dog park also. So there's a sign, a sign put up saying that the dog park was gonna be busy for 3-4 days. Mind you, still people will go take their dogs there anyway, so we're dog people. So lots of people went through the walkway, had dogs on a lead, as long as, you know, they keep everything in hand, we're dog people, we're okay with it. In the letter too, I've shown what kind of exposure we have. I had a letter from Howe, Ricky Howe. Rick sponsored us for the 1 year, and now he came to me and says, geez, Jeremy, we brought in thousands of dollars. I'm on board, I wanna do this. Eddie and Annette, they have Family Flowers. I think they were voted a couple of years ago, one of the best businesses in St. Thomas. We buy all their flowers from them. I've known those guys for years. They've got a letter that's in that thing saying they can't believe there should be any problem, but that's whatever. That's what we're gonna find out today. In here also, we've got 20 rooms from the Holiday Inn in St. Thomas. So I want to be sure that, you know, you don't think that you don't know me, so what I'm saying might not be true. I take care of business. So we've got 20 rooms already reserved. The Comfort Inn will fill. Comfort Inn is dog friendly. So new Holiday Inn isn't. So these are where all my judges and stuff go. I take the judges out. We do Boston Pizza. We go to New Salem Diner. I take them all the time. So a lot of money comes into the area. Fuel, everything else. Obviously, I could have got a hold of folks at Tim Hortons. I went to see the huge spike they have there. Because what happens when they come here, I have a food vendor come in, but most of the time they'll go for breakfast. People, if they stay here, they leave and go into town and spend some money. You know, so we had Elgin Tourism got a hold of us. I gave them an area so they could promote Elgin Tourism. I think the area impact that we have is pretty good. I'm in business. I want to see people in foot traffic. I think I'm a professional. Even there's a girl here who wanted to do a drone over top. We got $6,000. We spent in tents. This place looks great. We got flowers around the rings. People are dressed up. They wear, you know, it's not like a bunch of, I would say bikers, but I mean, you know, we look like we're kind of professional. We've got kids coming for Ontario championships. So it's people can come. It's a nice. It's user friendly. We can come watch. We're not charging any admission right now. Anyways. I came in because we're in for renewal. One of the things that happens when you're doing a dog show, I'm already getting hired for 3 years down the road. So we need to have some forewarning if there's a storm coming, you know. So we advertise across Canada so people can enter and people fly in. And what's happened is I came in and with this original letter, you know, I figured, okay, we're going to spend some more money. And I was informed that our rental fee was going to be $5,400, triple the amount. Well, I don't know, that's, we can't bear that, I don't understand it. So I was kind of in shock. I asked if had anybody seen any comparisons? Because there's lots of holes in this place. I mean, you know, they don't have any hydro, there's lots of things that we could work on to make it better and make it saleable. This place here should be running all the time. But they got the right people putting it together. and have power and have some stuff. I know it's a floodplain. I've been here for 40 years. It's not gonna flood that much. We went through a thing last year. We had 4 days straight of rain. We're hands-on. We took that show, got people to park out on Mapleton Line and brought them, walked them in. Because we knew then that the grounds were gonna get so soft, it was gonna create a problem. And I got my tractors down the road and I've had construction company and stuff. I know how to work things in and out of the yard. So I thought we did a heck of a job. There was some damage. I think the bill was $150, which was paid immediately. So not a whole lot of damage. It was $150. So basically what's happened is we're dealing with over a 33% increase. Or sorry, the 5,400 is 300. I came back because I'm caught now. I've got deposits on tents. I've got people that call from the States that are reserving rooms. So this is a huge deal. And one of the problems that we have is in a show, you'll have like what they call a specialty, a show within a show. So a particular breed. Well, that has to be approved by the Canadian Kennel Club and they need it 6 months in advance. We're past that now. So we've lost all our specialties. Which monetarily for us isn't good. I'm not happy about that at all. Because what I'm trying to do is get this is the oldest kennel club in Canada. There's some history here. And there's and you know, they got me on board here to try to make it successful again. And I worked really, really hard. And I always think that things are like a ladder. You keep walking up the run, and don't get rid of the run below you. And, you know, I felt that this place here, because of bags and stuff, we could really do something. At 5,400, that's obscene, first of all. That's newsworthy almost, you know, look, and the news now, for rents and all that stuff going up. It's triple the amount, and I've done nothing wrong, so I don't understand it. When I counter offered, when I left here, I said, look, we'll go $2,695. You keep the dog park, because that seemed to be a big deal, which is a 33% approximately a decrease of land use and a 33% increase of what we were paying. Not a good deal for me, but I'm caught now. I was told that the board, what I had done too, Scott Pennell and I talked, and one of the bones of contention that the board or whoever has is the people staying overnight. When people come in, we've had people with Prevos and big stuff coming in out of the States. They'll go because they want the 30 amp service. They're going to go to the campgrounds. So it's not like a campground and getting their piece of pie, you know. But a lot of people setting their dogs up. They got a small little camper. They're self-sufficient. They put all the crates out and all the stuff, put their awning out, and that's it. They're coming for a couple of days, and they'll leave to go get food and buy stuff. So, and I've been all over Ontario. There's never been a problem anywhere with that. And of course, if you have a rain that we had, you don't want a bunch of people traveling in and out, especially small trailers and stuff. That just creates a problem. So I counter offered with $2,695. I was told that, and that's why I'm here. I was told that I picked up $850. I'm sorry, an extra $850 from people that stayed overnight. And that was the deal I talked to Scott about. He says, man, we got to get these so that we can stay overnight here. So people can stay. They're not using any power. There's no power here anyways. And monetarily, because it's got to work both ways. We got to make money, and so do you guys. I understand that. So I picked up another $850, which I brought to the meeting. So I came to the meeting, and then the $850 explained the situation that we picked that extra funds up for people just parking around the rink. So that with the 1,800 brought that into $2,650 for that year. So I was told that my proposal would go to the board, and the board would vote on it. If the board voted against it, the $850 check would be ripped up, and there was not a deal happening. Well, I got a phone call, and you guys voted against it. And I got people, a lot of people in town here wondering how you voted against that, because they got, this is good business. And I don't understand it. So maybe I'm missing something here. So that's where I'm at. I want to find out who would vote against this or why, and maybe, you know, figure it all out. Because I got people that I got to answer to too. And I wanna know who we price check with. Cause I've done some price checking, and I'm telling you, there's deals out there. So. That's what I want.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Got a few minutes, any questions for Jerry? Jim, go ahead.
Jeremy.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
No problem.
Through the chair, Jeremy, thank you for your presentation. The information that you handed out to us, is this current, is this what the change was? Where you wrote in, you came from, I guess, Elizabeth, they quoted the old rates and the new rates?
No. That was handed to me, at the end of, 2022.
Yeah.
Remember, we have one show in the year, so we're pre-planning, years in advance. So it's almost like a letter of intent. You know, so that would be a guideline as to how, what I would expect. But that, it says right on there, this isn't approved by the board.
I see that there, but I don't see what we're proposing to you where it's tripled. I mean, you went from,
No, that's got nothing to do with it. That's what I was given. I was told.
it has a lot to do with it, because this is what you gave me, and I'm assuming this is what is taking place, but I don't see in this whole thing, and is this from you, Elizabeth?
I don't have benefit of that, Jeremy has.
I was told 5,400.
Yeah, but I don't, so
5,400,
who is this from?
great. I'm not sure who wrote it. I was given it to. I got through Scott.
Yeah, but on there, if this is current, I don't see the increase of 3 times as much, that's all. They make it very clear that,
No. That was a letter of intent. That's, all I'm showing you is what I received. So mind wise for me, I have my expectation. That's got no bearing on what I was. When I came here at the meeting, I was quoted $5,400, not that quote.
we voted to 5,400.
Elizabeth,
Is that what you're saying we voted on at a council meeting?
you voted against what I
Because
proposed.
I'm only going
Oh, I
what.
understand.
And I don't know about the triple increase or what we've done, or
Okay.
if we've done something. So that's my only question. I don't see what was proposed to you. And then you're saying this was proposed, but not approved by us, but then it got changed to
Yeah,
triple.
and that was at the end of 2022.
Yeah,
So mentally, like, it's a letter of intent, maybe there was guidance, you're pretty close. When I came to the meeting, I was quoted $5,400, way more. That's triple the amount of the original. amount.
I'd have to see the minutes of that meeting just to see what we did do.
Was there,
or didn't
I
do.
don't know, in the meeting. Oh, no, for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too.
Yeah, I don't think, was that a meeting I missed? Was it discussed this?
This was not discussed at a meeting, though.
Okay, so
I'm not sure where you're getting that information from, that the board approved it, but Elizabeth
That's what I was told.
said, we haven't,
Well, that's what I was told. I already got the whole call.
you keep saying,
I'm sorry.
you're saying Elizabeth told you that.
Elizabeth said to me that she would call me if the board turned down our proposal. Our proposal or counter proposal was $26.95 and reducing down the dog park.
Yeah, I just asked that question because I didn't see it there, but obviously Elizabeth can enlighten us just
Yeah,
where we're at with it. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that we move this to new business.
Sure.
Are there any other quick questions before I ask for that?
I got one more book left. Somebody wants it. It's not great reading.
Go ahead.
This is true. Grant. Jeremy, what would you like to see going forward? Just so the board knows what the action.
Well, I gotta kind of go to my board and I got a lot of people that are kind of mad. Says, I don't think we've been treated right. And you know, I live in this area. This is, there's good business and bad business. And I think that we've done everything like,
Scott's asking you what do you want done?
well, I think that first of all, I want to know, how the board voted. I was told that the board, voted.
I think that's immaterial how we voted. What,
to my people, it's not.
what do you want in the end? How do you want this resolved from your side?
Well, I think maybe how you do your business, if this is how you do it, people should maybe know.
You're not answering, anyway, you're not answering Todd's question. He's asking you, how would you like it resolved?
Well, I think that the.
Fall back in your court. How would you like it resolved?
I think that the price should be revoked. We should go back to our original price.
So that's your bottom line, right back to where we were before?
Well, we're starting to negotiate there.
I'm sorry, Todd, I just-
So can I ask a quick question? Is that, okay, through Grant to you. So this is the first I've heard of this. I'm new to the board. Is this a whole week at Dan Patterson? Is that what this is? Is it a whole week?
No, it's, we come in on a Wednesday to put the tents in.
Yeah.
With the show starts on the Thursday.
Yeah,
We're finished on the Sunday.
Okay.
Monday, they take the tents down and then move,
Gotcha.
because you can't do it during the
so
show.
you ran the whole thing, including the dog,
Yeah.
part, okay, that's all, just wanted to know what it was.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I can turn this. Okay, I would entertain a motion to. Switch to new business. For the secretary, Jim. Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving down to minutes, from the meetings of February 7th, any errors or omissions? So moved. So moved. And seconder, Lauren, all in favor? Motion carries. I should say welcome, Sam.
He's a busy man.
Yeah,
Live and in person.
And on TV.
I want to come down and see it every now and
yeah,
then.
it just has to be a lunch day too, Sam.
Okay, next, we move down to matters rising, versus a media report. Who's gonna take on?
Mary Ann's on vacation, so I'll take these two reports. Mr. Chair, the media report was forwarded in the advance of package. A very busy month for staff, not only just undertaking our regular operating procedures, but there's a lot of special projects going on as well. Media report just focused on the events happening at the campgrounds and campgrounds opening for reservations on May 1st. We've completed resource assistant interviews were conducted February 29th, and I'm pleased to say that a new person will be joining staff next week. The St. Thomas Elton Children's Walkthrough Festival organization is well underway. That's being held May 7th to 10th, and over 3,000 students are already registered, with many more on the waiting list. So it's great to hear. We're conducting site visits and finalizing pre-planning sites for the spring 2024 plant. As I mentioned, the reservation system opened for the campgrounds on March 1st. There are 328 reservations remaining on March 1st, as compared to 43 in 2017 when that online system was first launched, and up from 245 in 2023. So that online platform continues to well perform, and it's an indication of how well the campgrounds are received in the public. Also, all the 30 campsites at Lake Whitaker for July 1st were booked by noon on March 1st. So that's an indication too of how well received they are. And seasonal staff interviews were conducted on March 18th to 22nd. So things are starting to gear up for the busy season. And I'll turn it over to Jen for watershed conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, we did a couple of projects at the Dalewood Dam this spring after some heavy flows. A lot of debris was accumulated on the upstream side of the dam, so we used some heavy equipment to get those out. You can see in that one picture that giant 3-pronged tree that was lying broadside across the dam, so that definitely had to come out. Some watershed condition statements in March due to a lot of heavy rain that we had. And a piece of good news, we were able to obtain $13,000 in reallocation WECI funding to help offset the cost of the options report that was done last year. So that was really well received. And also we successfully lowered the stop logs just last week back into position for the season.
Any questions for Jen? Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you to the chair. With your flooding forecast, was it a lot less dangerous this year with hardly any snow, or does it really snow and ice make that big difference?
It does make a difference, especially without the ice accumulation in the creek. So that definitely lowered the risk of flooding and ice jamming in Port Stanley. So that was really nice. Definitely nice. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the lot less snow this year did reduce those flooding events, but then you never know how it's going to offset how much, how quickly we might get drier this year. So kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, thank you.
Gloria?
Thank you. I have a few questions about the water festival, if I may.
Sure.
On student volunteers for May 7th to 10th. Who have you reached out to, and have you got a good group of student volunteers as of yet?
Yes, we have 8 classes from Central Elgin that are lined up to volunteer at the festival, and then a group of leadership students from St. Thomas Aquinas out of London that the Catholic Board arranged for. So a good group of volunteers.
Thank you. Secondary question to that one, do they receive volunteer hours for their requirements? For this program?
Yeah, most schools won't allow that because it's done during school hours. So it's just an event that they participate in within their regular school session.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And continue, if there is an opportunity for the board to attend in the past, prior to the event starting, we have, as a board, met beforehand prior to the event starting. Is that going to be extended to the board members as well?
Yeah, that was just finalized actually yesterday. So Thursday, May 9th, will be the partner recognition event, and I'll circulate the information to members, but it will be Thursday, May 9th at 10:30 a.m. at Pinafore Park in St. Thomas. And that will be where all partners and sponsors come out to the festival. You get a chance to tour it and have lunch with all the volunteers.
Thank you. And if there is a need for more volunteers, are you going to reach out to
Yes.
the members of the board to have us man one of the stations again?
If you're willing, we would love to have you with the partner recognition invitation that will go out to you. I'll also send out the link to the volunteer form if any of you are interested.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Frank, did I see or is it John?
No, the question was already, so.
Okay, all right. Any further questions for Betsy?
Need a drilling rig?
Just moving on MECP to firm up and then I'll confirm.
If not, we have a resolution that staff reports on matters arising, A through C be received. Chair. All in favor? Carries. State revenue expense, I don't think so. So down to new business, item A, Ontario regulations will be.
Yeah, the correspondence was out in the advanced packages. I have nothing really to add. They're both FYIs. The first item, certainly from the Ministry of Natural Resources, we're going to be dealing extensively in the next report.
Okay. Lori, go ahead.
I'm trying to find it here. What I was hoping for with those, that the land acknowledgement be also be at the block of those, like we do on the beginning of the meeting.
Mhm.
Is this for the regulation updates? Yes,
Oh, that's next report, but you're looking for the land acknowledgement to be,
just be added to the beginning of the hearings page. Sorry,
oh, okay,
I've
yeah.
got blank here.
I got you.
For the hearings policy.
Yeah, for the hearings policy, we can make that update, but that's in future report, in a couple of
Thank you.
reports. Yeah,
Thank you.
we'll deal with that then.
Any concerns there? We'll just move on to the next one.
Actually, can I have just a motion to receive the correspondence?
Sam and Scott, Todd. All in favor? Carried. And down to deregulation.
Yeah, so this is the bulk of our meeting today. We really wanted to do an in-depth dive into the new regulation and the changes to the Conservation Authorities Act that are being proclaimed April 1st. There's a couple of things that we want to look at today. One is there's updates to existing regulations. So there's the enactment of 68821, which is rules and conducts in conservation areas, updates to the mandatory programs and services regulation. And then we're going to be looking at the new section 28 regulation, as well as those sections of the Conservation Authority Act, all of these effective April 1st. So the summary, the rules and conduct in conservation areas, OREG 6821, and the mandatory programs and services 68621. Then we have proclaimed sections of the Conservation Authorities Act and the prohibited activities, exemptions, and permits. This is a new regulation, Ontario Regulation 4121. The first two, we don't really have major concerns with. These two, the Ontario Regulation 688-21, rules of conduct and conservation areas. In the past, all 36 conservation authorities had their own regulation that pertained to the rules within a conservation authority on conservation areas. So our regulation was 111, and it listed all of the rules and regulations that could occur on our properties. Each of the 36 had someone like that. What they've done now under this regulation is combine them all into one regulation. It makes sense. It's probably long overdue, and there's not many changes from how we are operating right now, other than we've had to do some minimal updates to ensure that wherever we mentioned Ontario Regulation 111, we now don't mention it and we refer to the appropriate regulation. So no concerns there, just minor housekeeping that staff have had to do. Ontario Regulation 686-21, this is the mandatory programs and services regulation. We've had lots of discussion over this regulation over the past couple of years. There's been a couple of amendments to it, but again, not concerning to staff. They have simply outlined that they expect CEAs now to prepare and publish annual reports that outline the permit statistics that we do for Section 28. And Joe's already been doing this in our annual reports as well as monthly to the board, and then a December annual report to the board members as well, in terms of how many permits are we issued, have we issued, and have we complied with the requirements of any associated timelines. So again, nothing new for Kettle, but it's formalized in the regulation. So no concerns of staff on those two updates. What we want to spend the bulk of today on are discussing the changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, or at least the sections that are now going to be proclaimed April 1st, and specifically this new regulation, Ontario Regulation 4121, which will come into effect April 1st. So there's definitely actions that were required as a result of those changes. So Joe's going to take you through a summary of the relevant changes. We're going to look at redelegation of powers this morning, so allowing staff to continue to issue Section 28 permits. We're going to look at a reappointment of officers to ensure that we have appropriate motions that Joe and Jeff can continue to work as provincial offenses officers. And then we're going to walk you through all the administrative updates that are required because of these changes to the different regulations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to walk you through a summary of the relevant changes. This advances, this goes fast.
Okay. We got quite a few slides, so I'm actually gonna go to the pencil and scan today, so I have a better view of the slides with you. So first of all, as we talked about the new proclaimed sections of the Conservation Authorities Act that come into force on April 1st, primarily relate to sections 6 and 7. So talking about regulation areas where the authorities has jurisdiction, and we've had some new increases on enforcement and offenses to the Conservation Authorities Act. So just quickly, I wanted to highlight, so now under section 28 of the Act, it identifies the areas in which development is prohibited. So it identifies the areas of jurisdiction. All of these areas are consistent with the old regulations, so there hasn't been a lot of changes. We still regulate development on hazardous lands, wetlands, river and stream valleys, and areas adjacent to the Great Lakes. The one change that has happened here is the other areas. In our current regulation, we regulate lands 120 meters around wetlands, specifically provincially significant wetlands or wetlands greater than 2 hectares. With the new regulation, the change has reduced that to 30 meters. So we've gone from 120 meters consistent with PPS, and now we only regulate 30 meters around wetlands. So this is one change that has occurred and will ultimately impact our mapping. So we now have to go out and update our mapping to reflect that change. I keep hitting the wrong button there. Also under section 28.1, it provides a list of prohibited activities within our jurisdiction. These activities, again, have relatively remained unchanged. Alteration activities relate to straightening, changing, diverting, or interfering in any way with a water course or with a wetland. One thing I will speak to later on is the definition of the water course has changed. So that's one aspect that again will result in having to update regulation mapping. Development activities remains unchanged. So the definition of development under the prior reg remains the same as what's on the screen under the new reg. So these are some good Good aspects of the changes, they are kept currently, but now instead of in the regulations, they're prescribed in the Conservation Authorities Act. A couple of more additions. So when we talk about the tests of the regulation, those are things that guide our decisions. When and how do we issue permits? The old regulation referred to what we call the 5 tests, which was the control of flooding, erosion, dynamic beaches, and previously it included pollution and conservation of land. Pollution and conservation of land have been replaced with unstable soil or bedrock. One concern there is pollution used to give us the ability to deal with water quality concerns resulting from development, so sediment or development activities that were causing contribution to water quality. With that test being removed, that limits our ability to continue to regulate that aspect of it. And conservation of land, we didn't use that test a lot, but it was more related to wetlands, where we could look at more of the environmental importance or significance of wetlands. So with the removal of those two, it does kind of limit our powers around wetlands and development, and they've included unstable soil and bedrock. The other activity now, this is a new test that they've now put into the regulation that deals with the activities not likely to create conditions or circumstances that in the event of a natural hazard might jeopardize the health and safety of persons or result in damage or destruction of property. So this is one that brings the regulation in line with PPS. So PPS natural hazard policies consider health and safety. The regulation now brings us in line with that. And that's actually a result of a case law study relating to a violation of the regulation. So that's a secondary test now that we can apply to consideration of development applications. Just quickly through these sections, this is one thing we've identified before that we knew through the public consultation process. The province was introducing new powers of the minister. So the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry now has power to also issue permits under the Act. And I'll get into a little more detail in other sections of how those powers work. They introduced a new section that gives us the ability to cancel permits. Prior to this, we always did it as a practice. We could cancel a permit, we could bring it to the board for consideration. It's now actually legislatively included in the regulation. It gives us the ability to cancel permits when conditions haven't been met or there are certain activities that aren't in compliance with approved plans. But this would now be a new section as a hearing board. So if we were to cancel a permit, we would be bringing that to the hearing board for consideration and decision before those permits are canceled. And also now we have a new section that prescribes the authority's powers to delegate powers to issuing permits. So as Elizabeth mentioned at the start, permits are issued at the staff level through delegation of powers of the board. Simply what's happening here is they're moving it from one section to another section. So that requires us to redelegate those powers under the section that it applies by under the new regulation.
Before you leave this, I'm reading that to say that if we go through a process and either cancel a permit or do not issue a permit, the minister can issue the permit, even if we've gone through a process saying we're not going to issue.
Right. If it's okay, Sam, I have a slide about more of the ministers, and I'll address your question at that point.
So just through the chair,
Let's go.
the next slide, are you going to talk time frame that goes to the hearing board?
So what I thought is I'd go through the new proclamations of the act and then in a little more detail about the regulation and the process is. So that is coming. So what's also included now under the new section of the regulation is Ontario Regulation 4124, prohibited activities, exemptions, and permits. Similar to what Elizabeth reported on for our properties regulation, under 28, each CA had their own regulation. So for the Kettle Creek watershed was Ontario Regulation 1106. That's being replaced with this new regulation that is now applying to all conservation authorities of the province. So there's no longer 36 regulations under the section 28 of the Act. There's one regulation to bring us into consistency with each other. It still requires applications for permits to undertake otherwise prohibited activities in the regulated areas. This is where we see the biggest change, and where over the past month, Elizabeth and I have been spending a lot of time trying to understand these changes in updating all of our policies. So what Ontario Regulation 4124 does, it further prescribes areas where development is prohibited, and it updates definitions in the Act. It increases transparency of regulated areas with new mapping requirements. It provides a list of exemptions to certain low-risk development activities that no longer require approval from a conservation authority. It outlines permit application requirements, pre-consultation, and complete application processes. As well, it contains permits, issuance details relative to conditions, length, validity, extensions, etc. So I'm gonna go through a few of these so you understand the changes. As I mentioned, one of the biggest changes is the definition of watercourse. It's now defined as a defined channel having a bed or bank, having a bed and banks or sides in which water regularly or continuously flows. That's a change from an identifiable, the depression in the ground. So rather than just a depression that flows water, it has to have a bed with side banks or slopes. Where we anticipate this is mostly gonna affect us is in our headwaters of agricultural lands where there's currently grass swales or low depressions that have drainage connections to water systems. Those features are no longer a regulated feature under the Conservation Authorities Act as of April 1st. Only it has to have a defined channel with a bed and banks or sides.
So it's that like a municipal drain, no longer, no comment on municipal drains?
Well, and again, it depends. There are open ditch municipal drains that would have a defined channel, so they would still be a regulated feature. And as I get into some of the exemptions, if it's a tile drain or a low depression, then it would no longer be a regulated feature. So that's one change that again is another activity where we have to go back and update our regulation mapping, because we're currently regulating low depressions as well, that are no longer a feature that's regulated in the Act. And then we look at defining regulated areas. Under this, the majority of our regulated areas stay the same. As I mentioned, hazard lands, how we determine adjacent to Great Lakes, valley lands, and things like that. The one change we do know is in our current regulation, when it speaks to dynamic beach, our current regulation refers to a study that was completed called the Porcina Beach Management Study, where it defined the dynamic beach hazard limit. That's been removed and they've replaced it with 30 meters. So the result of that 30 meters and removing our study now reduces that dynamic beach hazard, or what we define as dynamic beach hazard in our regulations.
To the chair.
Go ahead, Sam.
Are there areas within the Port Stanley Beach Management Study that would go beyond the 30 meters such that they would no longer be regulated, but they were before?
Well, so in this case, it's still regulated. So after the dynamic beach, we have what's known as a flood uprush. So our regulation limit is beyond the flood uprush. So what this does is it just reduces the limit of what we consider the dynamic beach hazard. The issue here is dynamic beach hazard is an area of prohibitive policy. So we don't allow anything to happen to dynamic beach hazard, but we do have permissive policies in our flood uprush, which is the next landward extent after the dynamic beach. So it doesn't change our regulated area, but it would affect our policies in terms of where development is prohibited versus where it could be permitted.
Question for Frank, or you agree with you, Joe? So what dynamic means changing. So do you look at this annually to say, here's where the beach is now, because next year it could change?
Yeah, no, so in our area, this really only applies to the beach in Port Stanley, the public and the private beaches. So the dynamic beach hazard is landward upward of the lake, where that natural wave energy deposits sands and erodes sands, right? So what they've done is they've marked it as a 30-meter allowance for the high. To say within that allowance, that's the highest rate of where that dynamic nature of the beach occurs. So it's again, it's more related to policy considerations when we go to policy. How do we address the area that previously we prohibited development that's no longer in the dynamic beach?
Gotcha, okay.
But it is a concern that we have to address as we move forward. The applicable flood event standard, it's remained the same for the Kettle Creek watershed. So there are different flood event standards across the province, but they've identified them now in the schedule and the regulation. For Kettle Creek, it remains the Hurricane Hazel flood standard that occurred in 1954. So there's no change to our flooding standard for our permits. They did add a new section that now requires us to follow a certain list of prescribed requirements for maps of regulated areas. So we now must have mapping made available to the public on the authority's website. If you recall, we launched that at last year's AGM. We now have our online map your property where landowners can put in their address and find out if the property is regulated. So we're ahead of the game on this one. We have that available. We're now required to review it and update it annually. I think over the last year or so, we've been working on internal resources to give us the ability to update our mapping more often once we know it occurs. So we're there. We now have a public notification requirement, so if we have any significant changes to our mapping, we must post a public notification 30 days prior to the authority meeting when it's going to be approved. And where there are significant updates required, the authority shall promptly update the map. So I would say we're in good ground. That's current practice. Aside from now, we have that 30-day notification to update mapping. But we've been prepared and leading up to this regulation that we can handle those new requirements. One thing that was new and we knew was coming out as part of the public consultation is they provided a list of exceptions. So all of these activities that are listed as exceptions in the regulation no longer apply to the Conservation Authorities Act. So it means a permit is not required from the Conservation Authority for these activities. One thing I would note is each activity comes with some conditions. So it's not an outright exemption. For example, the non-habitable accessory building or structure, it has to be accessory to a main use. So the intent of that is more for a storage building, like a utility shed. It has to be under 15 square meters and it can't be located in a water course or a wetland. So, but in terms of exceptions, seasonal or floating dock, rail, chain link or panel fence, agricultural infield erosion control structures, non-habitable accessory buildings or structures under 15 square meters, which is 160 square feet. That's consistent with the changes to the building code a few years ago. And also an unenclosed detached deck or patio that again is under 15 square meters or not located in a water course or wetland. Carrying on with exemptions, they've also identified installation of new tile drains that are not within a wetland or water course, not within 30 meters of a wetland. So there's again certain conditions to each of these. Installation, maintenance, and repair of a pond for water and livestock. Maintenance or repair of driveway or private lanes, maintenance or repair of public roads, maintenance and repair of municipal drains, and reconstruction of non-habitable garage with no basements as long as it's within the current footprint. The point to the chair's question on municipal drains, years ago, there was a collective of drainage superintendents, municipalities, conservation authorities, ministry, federal agencies that developed what was called the Drainage Act Protocol. And that comes with standard compliance requirement forms. It's supposed to streamline permitting approvals and identify certain works that have to follow a list of requirements. What they're saying here is as long as the municipality is doing works under that accepted standard requirement forms, then those works are no longer required to get approval from the Conservation Authority. Through Conservation Ontario and our own conversations with our local drainage superintendents, we're working collaboratively to maintain a process. We think it's still beneficial for municipalities to at least notify us that they're going in to do works under the DART. It helps streamline so that we're aware it's happening. If we get phone calls of an excavator near a water course, we know that it's this. So although they're exempt from getting permits, we are working with them to have a process where we're still being notified and giving us the opportunity to confirm that yes, that meets the exemption or this area of that work may still require a permit. But now we do have a set of listed exemptions that no longer require permits. The regulation now also outlines pre-submission consultation. Again, this is a current practice. We encourage pre-consultation. We want to have pre-consultation with landowners. The regulation now recognizes that we may engage in consultation, but if an applicant requests it, we are required to meet. So it just adds another layer of requirements in the regulation if they wish to pre-consult. Application timelines, what has come out through the regulation is consistent with current practice with what Conservation Ontario through the Ministry of Natural Resources has developed for us to work towards. So ultimately, once we receive an application, staff are required within 21 days to confirm whether it's complete or not. So if the application is deemed incomplete, they need to submit more materials before we process that application.
Joe?
Yes.
So if the application is incomplete, does the 21 days start over again?
Correct.
Good.
So that's our understanding. So the very importance of pre-submission consultation gives an opportunity for staff to advise that landowner before application what we must see. So we need a site plan, grading plan, we need a geotechnical report. Then we advise them what a complete application is. When we first get an application, we have 21 days to review it and determine yes, it has or not. One key factor there is once we determine an application is complete, we cannot ask for any other information. So it binds them to that. And then once we have a complete application, we have 90 days to make a decision. So if we do not make a decision on the application within 90 days, the landowner has a right to appeal that lack of decision. Not too concerned with it. We've been working under those parameters for several years now and have been to meet those requirements. Little concerning that we can't ask for more documents, so we have to be careful that when we get a complete application, we review it in detail, and we make sure at that point that we're confident we're not asking for anything else.
To the chair, is there anything that precludes the minister from exercising their discretion to issue the permit during the pendency of the permit application?
So when we get to the minister appeal process, landowners can request minister review once a decision has been made by the authority. So you have to make a decision first. And I'm almost at the appeal section. So the other thing, we've always had the ability to put conditions on a permit. And if the landowner objects to those conditions, they can request a hearing of the board for you to make a decision whether those conditions are applicable or not. The regulation now prescribes conditions on when permits can be imposed on a permit. So they have to assist with mitigating the effects of the 5 tests, mitigating the effects of health and safety, or for supporting the administration or implementation of the permit, including reporting, monitoring, and notification. So again, it's just further prescribing when we can apply conditions, although we've always had the ability to do that. Period of validity, under the current regulation, our permit maximum term is 2 years. There was a list of certain activities that could be allowed to be up to 5 years. The new regulation now gives the authority and the ability to issue a permit up to 5 years. And any permits issued with an earlier expiry date, those applicants have a right to request an extension at each time. So previously it was 24 months, now it's 60. I think typically 2 years is a good time frame that we continue to issue permits at. Sometimes we get into the 5-year one for multi-lot development. So a plan of subdivision where there's multiple lots in our regulation limit, we'll issue the developer multi-year permit for 5 years to allow them to kind of build out those lots under one permit. But that's another change that just gives the authority more ability to extend how long a permit can be issued for. CA permitting policies. So this is a new one now that's been included into the reg that states we shall develop policy and procedure documents. As KCCA, we do have policy documents that are very outdated, so it will be a requirement now to take advantage of this new regulation to do a comprehensive policy review and go out for public consultation. But now they prescribe that our policy should include details regarding pre-submission consultation, procedures respecting a request for review, standard timelines for the authority to make a decision, any other policies or procedures the authority deems advisable, and a process for the periodic review and updating the authority's policies and procedures, including consulting with stakeholders. And so this is a major task that staff will now be going forward with to do a comprehensive review and update of our policies to ensure we're in compliance with the regulation. Request for reviews is a new one. So an applicant may request a review of the authority if the applicant has not received a notice of complete application within 21 days, whether the applicant disagrees with the authority's decision that the application is incomplete, or whether the applicant is of the view that a request of the authority for other information, studies, or plans is not reasonable. So this would now be a new requirement under the reg that would be again subject to the hearing board to review and make decisions on. However, with this, we're a bit ahead of the game. So we had a controversial application a few years ago based on legal advice. We already have a very similar process in our hearing board today. So again, it's a standard practice, but now it's a requirement under the regulations. So it's another responsibility of the hearing board, you guys as the board, to make decisions if they disagree with staff's opinions on complete application. One issue with this one is now it says that if someone requests review, we have 30 days to make a decision. So that does complicate things when the hearing board meets on a monthly basis, or we may not have a meeting in July. So we'll speak to that and how we plan to address that in the subsequent staff report when we talk about delegation of powers. But there are now timelines in which decisions must be made. Same thing with permit fees. So under section 28 of the permit fees, if an applicant disputes what the fees are for those development fees, they can request reconsideration, and that's another power of the hearing board, that they can make a decision whether they want to address those planning those development fees. And again, a decision has to be made within 30 days. Appeals. Sam, this is where we're getting to minister review. So once an authority has made a decision, they have a right now to apply for minister review. So they can request the minister to review the decision that this board has made and the reasons for it. And then the minister has the power to override that decision if he feels so. He can issue, if this board has refused a permit, and they request review of the minister has the powers to overturn that decision and issue a permit under the Conservation Authority Act. What we do understand is the minister is saying he doesn't want to be reviewing everything. This isn't set up for the minister to review it. But it provides that opportunity for a landowner to go to the province if they disagree with the decision.
And then it shouldn't be in there if that's what the minister is saying.
Yeah, well, yeah.
The powers are in there, and other sections of the act, the minister can also require the authority to issue a permit or not issue a permit as well. So the minister does have some powers to step in and interfere with decisions.
Okay. So the question is this on a website, a standard form of appeal, or is it?
No, so right now it's within section 30 of the Conservation Authority Act, and it outlines I'm just giving you a quick hierarchy summary. There's a clear step-by-step. You have to submit it within 15 days. The minister has 30 days to make a decision whether or not they're going to review it, so there's no guarantee he will. If there's no response within 30 days, it's assumed that he's not reviewing it, and then there's certain protections. But the minister's decision is binding, final decision.
So it acts like an MZO in many other cases.
Sorry?
It acts like an MZO.
So it's very similar, yeah, and changes to the act that were already amended as part of Bill 53 includes MZOs. We're under an MZO, the Conservation Authority cannot deny it. We can issue, we have to issue a permit, we can put conditions on it, but we're not allowed to deny a permit for an MZO. Those are already in the act, so, so minister review now is a new avenue, and the landowners also continue to have the ability to appeal your decisions to the local planning appeal tribunal.
Go ahead, Chad.
Even if the minister has denied the request for a special permit?
So in this case, there are limitations that if a landowner has requested minister review, he can't necessarily appeal to the LPAT until he has an answer from the minister whether he's gonna review it or not. So if the minister reviews it, the LPAT is no longer available.
So it stays the jurisdiction of the LPAT pending the minister's determination, but if the minister says, no, they still have another bite at the apple by going to the LPAT.
No, so if the minister says no, that's the end.
Okay.
Right, so what they're doing here is there's two avenues to a landowner. If you've been refused a permit, you can either go to the minister or you can go to LPAT. If the minister does not accept or intends not to review the decision, then you still have the ability to go to LPAT. But if the minister reviews it and makes a decision, that's the final, that's the end.
Well, that kind of invitation to forum shopping is not a good policy, and it lends itself to,
Yeah, vagueness.
Go ahead, Jeff.
To the chair, it'd be an interesting stat at the end of the year, how many people actually appeared to the minister and how many the minister did actually change. Right. That'd be an interesting stat at the end of the year.
It'll be very interesting to see how these changes play out. There's been lots of conversations at Conservation Ontario and the CAs. There's obviously lots of concerns and interpretation and how we're gonna manage this. I think the approach Elizabeth and I have taken is we're dealing with the cards that have been dealt. We don't anticipate any changes before April 1st. And this is what we have to deal with now in terms of appeals to decisions on development applications.
Right, yeah, was through you, Chair. Was LPAT not replaced by the Ontario Land Tribunal? No, or?
Well, so there is both language that I've seen out there. The new regulation refers to the local planning appeal tribunal, which I guess could be the Ontario.
I think it's the OLT now.
Right, which should be the OLT. I've been sticking to what verbatim written regulation. So LPAT could be OLT.
Through your chair, is there cost associated with these reviews?
No.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware. There's nothing in the regulation that speaks to a fee of a landowner request administrative review. They're made like for typical like a planning tribunal, similar to a planning act process, it's probably the best interest of the applicant to retain professionals so that will represent them.
Yep.
And we may be asked to come and defend our decision, or we may need to retain professionals to assist us in that, but there are no, say, application fees associated with us.
Okay.
In these specific cases. So then now we get into part 7 of the proclamations of the Conservation Authorities Act, which includes new powers for enforcement and offenses. And from my opinion, this is good news. I think you've heard it say before on enforcements. Under the current process, we have to file an information under the Provincial Offences Act and seek court orders. That's our process today. Now they've introduced section 30 updates to the Conservation Authorities Act. Section 30.1 prescribes the ability to appoint officers to enforce regulations under the Act. Currently, myself and Jeff Lawrence are appointed officers to enforce these regulations. But because the section of the Conservation Authorities Act that gives you that ability has been moved, we have to reappoint those officers today under section 30.1, because previously we were appointed under section 20. So it's a more of an administrative process. Section 30.2 and 30.3 provides new powers for entry of property. So there are prescribed situations where we can enter a property if we believe there's been a violation that's going to likely affect the control of flooding, that's going to affect health and safety. What if they've submitted an application form, there's all these prescribed lists that now give the ability of officers to enter property without a search warrant. It also gives us the ability to take photographs. So seizure type evidence is now powered in the Act where we don't get a search warrant if we need to take a picture.
Go ahead, Dan, Brad.
So to the chair, when you do something like that, would you have the OPP going with you, or would you just go in on your own? And-
Well, I think it's case by case, right? So our practice would still be to get permission. We'd always
Yeah.
go in order to where we're going on the property, but depending on the severity of the case or what we believe is happening, we may have to enter the property.
You don't want to put yourself in danger by telling you don't.
Right, and Jeff and I both have some provincial offenses officer certified training.
That's fine.
So we, safety first, if it escalates, then certainly we don't have
Yeah.
to. With them. But now there's certain more prescribed provisions that we can do that without search warrants. So that makes our job a little easier to go in and, you know, if you think that we know what's happening, but I can't take a picture, I have to go get a search warrant and come back, the activity could be done. So it's a good provision. It also now includes provisions for stop orders. So as I kind of mentioned before, under the current reg, we couldn't issue a stop work order. We'd issue a violation, warning them and saying, please stop. But now we actually have legally binding stop orders that we can issue the landowner, and they're required to stop doing work until the matter's been resolved. So those are new powers in the Act that officers have.
Yeah, well, Frank, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Jim sort of asked my question, but you issue a stop order and they don't stop it. What's your next step? You have to take them to court, like, the police, like, they could still do a hell of a lot of damage before it's heard in court, right?
Correct.
So that's the procedure then.
Correct. And the next penalty is the slide where they've increased the offenses and the fines of the conservation authority. Previously, it was $10,000 maximum or 3 days of imprisonment. Now the offenses are if you violate the subsections 28 of the Act, a condition of a permit or a stop work order, you could be taken to court, and upon conviction, the penalties have been increased to $50,000 for individuals, $1 million for corporations. If you continue to work after a stop work order, the maximum fines are $10,000 per day or $200,000 per day for corporations. And as well, upon conviction, the court may increase those fees to an amount equal to the amount of the monetary benefit that the person has.
So what do? Hand them on the sheet saying, by the way, if you don't stop.
Well, currently, this is a new one, so in our next report on forms, we have a stop work order currently being reviewed, and developed by our solicitor to ensure it's binding, but it works similar. We give them a stop work order. If they continue to work, we just collect evidence and we would go to court, and upon conviction, they'd be liable to those fees.
So essentially, the NECP has ditched us and we're the ones responsible for enforcement now.
Well, I think a legal would say we're all obligated for enforcement under our own pieces of legislation, but now I think we have more powers. So I think in the past, we may have, as an agency, relied on other agencies that had more powers for enforcement or compliance with the same goal. But now we have those similar powers of the Act that will help us to ensure compliance.
So through the chair. So if you, with this information now, April 1st, it'd be a big edge for you dealing with the person you've been dealing with for 3 or 4 years, changing the direction of Kettle Creek. I'm not opening up any discussion, just an
Yeah,
FYI.
I think that the powers are there for any work that occurs after April 1st. So if the work had already started prior to April 1st, they'd be subject to the old regulation. Anything that happens after April 1st, would be subject to this regulation. I think from staff's opinion right now, we're still trying to figure out how and when to use these powers. I think it's always been direction of this board to staff to try and work on a voluntary basis with the landowner first. And if we can't reach compliance through that, then we use our legal enforcement tools. And I think that would still be a similar approach we think we would take, but as we develop these new stop work order powers, Conservation Ontario and I will be providing future training sessions that staff will be participating in. And perhaps we'll bring through our updated policies, we'll bring procedures to this board to outline how we intend to use those
Yeah,
powers.
because it's difficult when you're dealing with someone when money is no object.
Correct.
That's been the issue for 2 or 3 years, and we can talk.
So I want to make it clear that with this power, staff's not going to go and start handing out stop
No, I
orders
understand.
everywhere.
Well,
I think we
He's
will.
not new news, he's.
Right. Right, and we'll intend to follow our normal procedures, but we have this tool in our back pocket when it gets to a point.
This is good stuff.
So. And then finally in here, limitation period stay the same. So again, we have 2 years from the date of when we find out about an offense before our statute leaves. So that 2 years gives us the ability to work with landowners to try and resolve the issues before we move to charges in court. As long as the charges in court have been filed within 2 years of the date we find out about it, that's the same limitation period we have now. And then secondly, when we go to court, usually our main objective is restoration orders. There is a fine, but the fine isn't the biggest, it's a penalty, but we don't see that money, that goes back to the provincial offenses court, so there's no benefit to the Conservation Authority for fines. We always want the rehabilitation order, and now it's prescribed in the in the act of, yes, we can request rehabilitation orders, and here's the parameters around how we can request them. So again, just adding to those powers.
I'm not too sure if fines aren't bad because that money goes back to municipalities.
But then it
Good try,
it doesn't directly.
good try, Chair.
Yeah. I think the word doesn't directly come back to it. So that's kind of a summary of the new proclamations to the act relating to section 28, the implications that it has on the authority. Moving forward, what we see is required action. We need to redelegate powers under the act so that staff can continue to issue permits, and we'll have a subsequent report on that following this one. We need to reappoint officers under section 30 of the act so we can continue to enforce the reg. We have a second report for that coming up. We need to approval of updates to section 28 administrative documents. So we have application forms, record of pre-consultation, all the documents that now have to be updated to be in compliance with the reg. And then we have some immediate interim policies and procedures that we're working on. I think the most substantial workload that's going to come out of this is we have to update our regulation mapping to bring it into compliance. And that's going to be a time-consuming effort. As well as now we need to update our policies and procedures to reflect the changes, to be in compliance with those requirements. And as well, I think from staff's opinion, we want to take this opportunity to do a comprehensive policy update to ensure that it's been a long time since we've updated our section 20 policies. So we want to spend some time to go through that policy, go through the public notifications processes and bring it back later in the year with full policy updates.
To the chair, will we need to update our request from the municipalities for funds to cover these original costs, or did we build this into our previous budget that we submitted?
Mr. Chair, part of the reasoning for the increase that we had this year was legislative changes and backfilling senior positions. So a little bit of that is built into this to undertake that, as well as the mapping. I have some pools of money that I plan on tapping into for one-time costs such as this. Hopefully, depending on what the level of mapping that we're looking at, and hoping that we can cover those costs without going back out to municipalities.
And you'll be able to let us know whether that's sufficient within a few months?
Yeah.
Good.
And I'd also reiterate that our section 28 application fees were currently under an order from the minister that those can't change.
Did you say can't?
So the fees that we charge the applicant to apply for a permit are still set at the current fees that we approved at the end of 2022 for 2023, so we can't reduce those current.
So going back to unstable soil or bedrock, what's unstable bedrock? Gravel?
I'm not averse to answer that, but I'm not too familiar with bedrock. I think it's more northern Ontario issues that we deal with. But that's something that we need to better understand as I move forward. And unstable soil deals with organic like peat soils and things like that within the wetlands. Bedrock, they don't have enough familiarity.
So with
Basically all along the escarpment any edge of that stuff. The top rock it's just unconsolidated and made slough off, rock falls, that sort of stuff.
I was being a bit of a smart ass. So going back to subdivision, whatever. And usually if there's a concern about silt or soil moving, we ask for the silt barriers put up. Are we still able to do that? Because it is beside a creek. And we can't have soil going to the creek, but we can't say it's pollution. How do we do
So
that?
under the conservation authority, that we have to be careful why it's. Usually those types of mitigation measures relate to erosion mitigation control. So for that purpose, we can, for the purpose of preventing impacts to water quality, that would be a questionable requirement of us. But the municipalities still have that power through your development regulations, your development approvals. It's just, before the authority could enforce silt fencing because of sediment in the creek, but with the loss of pollution, I'm unclear if we'll have that ability still moving forward to enforce it.
Right?
Yeah, just to reiterate, our ability to regulate around water use was diminished, was it 120 or 128 to 30?
For wetlands.
Yeah, so was it 120 to 30?
So it was originally 120, which is consistent with adjacent lands under the PPS.
All right, and there was a definition for the wetland.
Correct, yeah. The definition hasn't changed, so it's been in the act a couple of times and they haven't changed the definition.
Okay.
John?
Through you.
Yep.
I think maybe, and if the groundwater association got their stuff together, that might have been because of us, but there were people they couldn't do long-term pump tests and develop their wells to a sediment-free state because the conservation areas were coming after them. You can't do this pump test, that's polluted water. It's like, well, no, it's silty water and we need to pump it in order to get it cleared up. And it was more a Waterloo region than it was a real, like it was a pain in the ass problem. And they just sort of went, hey, you can't call that pollution. I'm assuming that might be some of it.
So what we're, based on that presentation, we're just looking for a recommendation that you receive the report on the legislative and regulatory changes received. And then there are a couple more subsequent reports where we'll talk to the redelegation and the appointment policies and those actions. So we're just looking for receipt of the changes based on staff report.
I'll move it.
Jim and Sam, any further questions or comments?
Thank you, Joe. That's an awful lot of information for us to absorb it in a meeting, so I'm glad you and Elizabeth are on top of it, so anyway, thank you.
All in favor?
Well, wait a minute,
Sure.
because if we vote on this, it might exhaust the matter and take it off the table. Is there anything else we need to consider in terms of response along the lines with why this is detrimental to us? And are there other authorities who are doing something like that we should, or is this not the meeting to discuss that?
I think, Mr. Chair, and Joe can jump in if he wants. Conservation Ontario has been really helpful in this process, both in terms of looking at what do we need to do to bring ourselves into compliance for April 1st, but also looking at templates for interim policies, transition policies, and new policies today. The Conservation Ontario is also leading weekly meetings with GMs and senior planning staff to discuss issues as they arise, and I think are coming up with responses and continuous communication with the ministry over issues as they're identified. I think over the next 2 or 3 months, as all of this gets enacted, I think more things are going to arise that we need to address.
Thank you.
Did they also critique this? Did I see a letter where they wrote back to a long thing to the minister saying, here are the pros and cons of, or not?
That was for the updates to the environmental system.
Okay.
Yeah, that would have happened though as part of the original Bill 23.
Yeah.
So there was the public consultation process where comments were submitted then. So some of this stuff, I would say some, we were aware of it was coming through public consultation, but there was certainly new stuff that wasn't identified through that process.
My sense of things sitting on council, and when we run into this, people are always bringing up, why doesn't the conservation authority get in there and they can't? Okay, so But there doesn't seem to be an uproar or to go after the ministry to say, look, all of us citizens are concerned about what you're doing. They just let it go. Okay.
And then if I could, through Mr. Chair, to expand on Elizabeth, one example of that Conservation Ontario was some clarification around that Drainage Act piece, where they went out and they met with the SAO, the Drainage Super Association of Ontario. They are coming together on a general agreement on the interpretation and the process, and we're working together to go through that. So those things are happening in the, I guess, the back rooms, the back door.
I think as a board, our biggest concern is staff time and costs, because that's going to be borne on the levy. And that should be our biggest concern right now. Frank's comment, when did this start? When we first had our first meetings with, about the changes? 6 years ago?
Well, there's been legislation since 2017, different acts that have been looking at.
We had those public meetings before that, and there was a huge pushback against the province, because they thought there's just gonna be a cakewalk, and they found out there's a huge pushback. They just keep finding other rounds. They work around.
The whole emphasis in Ontario is to push the things down to the lowest level so that people complain to us, and it's the province doing it, okay? And then we'll raise property taxes.
No, exactly. Anyway,
Ready to vote.
we have a mover, seconder, all in favor? Carry. You want a quick stretch or just keep on plugging through? I got 1 o'clock, so I'm.
Yeah.
You plug in, stop.
So now we're going to take you through those individual reports on all the steps that we need to have in place for April 1st. The first one is redelegation of section 28 hours under the Act. The Act has always provided opportunities for the authority to delegate some of its powers under the Act. The prime example is the regulation approval officer has typically been the general manager or board of directors. And their delegated powers to issue permits and issues extensions on permits. So we're not suggesting that changes. Here at Kettle Creek, the full authority has always been the hearing board, and you see on the screen the different examples as why a permit would go to the hearing board. So reconsideration of fees, permits issued under section 28 with or without conditions. A hearing has to be offered to an applicant before it's refused by staff or approved with conditions, canceling a permit. All of those things would still go to the hearing of the board. As Joe mentioned in his presentation, the complication is that now there are timelines that are set out for when the board has to make a decision. So a reconsideration of fees for permit applications, the decisions have to be made in 30 days. And as you're aware, we don't meet in July. Sometimes we don't meet in August. And occasionally we have problems with quorum. So staff thought about this and in consultation with legal counsel. Basically, our suggestion is that we recommend some powers be delegated to the executive committee, because it's probably easier to call an executive committee in between board meetings, and more likely that we would achieve quorum within 30 days. So those requirements are delegated to the executive. Because of a disagreement, so reconsideration of fees for permit applications of a quorum of the full authority cannot be established within 30 days and requested by an applicant because of a disagreement with a notice of a complete application. Again, those would be deferred to the executive committee.
Are there any concerns about their qualms? Should probably know about it now, if it is concerned.
I think one point of clarification is the board still holds that power. It only goes to the executive when a meeting can't be held within 30 days.
So the actual motion would be that in accordance with section 28.4 of the Conservation Authorities Act, the authority delegate all the powers and duties of the authority with respect to issuing permits and permit extensions under section 28 of the Act or its regulations to the appointed regulation approval officer. And further, that the authority delegate all powers and duties of the authority with respect to requests for hearing of the board that in accordance with the Act or its regulations requires a decision within a legislated timeline to the executive committee if a quorum or meeting of the full authority cannot be achieved.
I'll move that.
Sam, seconder. Todd? Any question? Go ahead.
Is there, under the recommendation that the meeting, because it's an executive committee and the time considerations, that it could be done by Zoom? Do we need to have that?
I don't think you need to have that in the motion. That's already established in the admin regs.
Okay,
Thank you.
so who is on the executive committee exactly?
Chair, vice chair.
Okay.
Frank and what's this one? John.
Interesting. Now that we know.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? All in favor? Carried.
So the next one is reappointment of officers, as Joe mentioned in his summary reports, himself and Jeff Lawrence from our Office of Forestry and Lands Supervisor are currently appointed regulation enforcement officers with powers to enforce both section 28 and section 29. However, they're appointed under a different section of the Act. When this new proclamation happens April 1st, it will be under 30.1. So just a matter of housekeeping, we wanted to reestablish those reappointments of officers. I thought it was worthy of mentioning as well that we do follow Conservation Ontario's protocol when deciding who we should designate as provincial officers, which suggests that those officers have adequate training and a clean criminal record check before appointment. Just so you are aware, both Joe and Jeff have their required municipal law enforcement training, and both recently, again, went through a clean criminal record check. So those are all in place as you make this reappointment of officers. So again, the motion would be that in accordance with section 30.1 of the Conservation Authorities Act, the authority appoints the manager of planning and development, Joseph Gordon, and the forestry and land supervisor, Jeff Lawrence, as regulation enforcement officers with all the powers and duties of an officer appointed under the Act for enforcement of regulations under section 28 and 29 in the jurisdiction of the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority.
Jim, seconder, Frank? Any further questions or comments?
No.
All in favor? Motion carries.
I'll turn the next one over to Joe.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So over the past month, we've been diligently working on updating our application forms, our information package to advise landowners of the changes and how to apply for a permit. All of that was in your advanced package, so we're just looking for approval of those documents tonight. They've been vetted through legal counsel. What wasn't included in your package that we didn't feel needed approval is we've also been working on a series of template communication letters for those key stages, like record of pre-consultation, notice of complete application, and all of those have gone through the lawyer and vetted. So, and now we have, as part of this, we now have a PDF fillable form, so it's a little more easier and efficient for landowners to fill out and submit. So, we are looking for today for approval of those administrative documents that were in your advanced package. The only thing I would note is, like I said in my earlier presentation, the stop work order is currently being reviewed and developed by our prosecutor to ensure that it's legally binding for court.
Questions or concerns?
Mr. Chair, just before the vote, I would like to thank Joe for over the past month. This regulation was dropped April 16th, and we've got complete applications, internal policies and stuff for you to review today. And that's due to Joe's diligence and trying to get all this ready and ready to enact on April 1st.
March, sorry.
March 16th. February 16th. What month are we in? February 16th, yeah.
All right. It was circulated to us on family.
Yeah, that's on the holiday, yes.
Good luck.
Sam, good.
Do we need to delegate the completion of the stop work order materials to the executive committee in case something comes up before our next meeting?
Mr. Chair, I don't anticipate us going out and using that stop work order. I don't think there's a lot that needs to be done by legal. Certainly, Grant Inglis has reviewed it and didn't have many concerns with it, but he wanted a prosecuting lawyer to take a look at it just to make sure that it was, we had our T's crossed and I's dotted. So I don't anticipate it being held up very long.
Right.
And I will so move with thanks to Joe.
Seconder, there's a recommendation. Sharon? Any further questions? All in favor? Carried.
And then finally, we have just approval of some housekeeping to some interim policies. So we have our KCA administrative bylaw, which is the advanced package. We just highlighted changes that's referencing the new regulation instead of the old regulation, as well as our KCCA hearing procedure guidelines. So that document we just had to update so it made sure it included those new provisions that the hearing board would be looking at. The process is still the same. It's in compliance with the Conservation Ontario recommended guideline. It's just housekeeping amendments for that purpose. And I guess I'll take the liberty to note Lori's recommendation earlier in the meeting to include the land acknowledgement within that hearing guideline. And as well, we have a KCCA interim policy guideline that went out in the advanced package. That's been developed with recommendations from Conservation Ontario. Just basically is saying if our current policies reference and policies related to an activity that's no longer regulated or has been changed by the act, that we're going to rely on the regulation of the act and not the policy. With that, there is a Conservation Ontario interim guidelines to support conservation administration of Ontario Regulation 4124. This is a document that has been reviewed by the Ministry of Natural Resources. It's a guideline document to assist conservation authorities for when we're developing our policies to ensure we're all being consistent and are clearly communicating what the changes are. So we've included that in there as part of our interim policy, that if there's something in our current policies that can't address what the application is being applied for, then staff will rely on that document to inform our decisions. So we're looking for endorsement and approval of those housekeeping amendments to the administrative bylaw and the hearing and procedure guideline, and approval of the interim policy guideline for the administration and implementation of OREG 4124.
I'll move that.
Stan moves, is that your Frank? Okay. Any further questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, moving down to the BCCA Washington Enhanced Riverine floodplain mapping. Public notation.
I'll take this, Mr. Chair. The Dog Creek floodplain mapping, as you remember, at the last February 7th meeting, we had Aquifer Beach here and they gave you a presentation on the updated mapping. The final reports were received on February 29th and will be available on our website. With Ontario Regulation 4124, you heard during Joe's presentation, when mapping updates result in significant enlargements or reductions to CA regulated areas, the public are to be notified for 30 days prior to a full authority meeting where the changes are to be heard on the agenda. So even though the regulation isn't in place to April 1st, we want to act in the spirit of that already. And the Dog Creek floodplain mapping that was released by Aquifer Beach does have significant changes for one area of the watershed. This is a blow up of the Talbotville area. You can see in the top right corner that there's no floodplain located basically out in the field area. And then the bottom left is where the updated flood mapping is. So a number of more spill type areas out in the agricultural field and a couple of impacts to residents in that area. So what we're suggesting is that floodplain mapping not be considered by the board until the May 17th meeting, and we take an opportunity to go out and inform the public of these changes. We've done a one-page flyer to the affected area with board approval will be sent out either this week or next to the affected residents, advising them of a virtual information session to be held on April 16th from 6 to 7 p.m. where staff and the engineers will be available to answer questions. We've also developed a new engagement section on the website, which again, we're prepared to launch after this meeting. We're calling it the Watershed Connections portion of the website, and it's where the public can have basically a one-stop shop that they can read up on any new projects or initiatives that the authority is undertaking. So this is a screenshot of the website. It's basically a page within our website. You can see the Dodd Creek floodplain mapping project on the left, new section 28 regulations. So all the information that we just went through with you would be on that section. They can read the new policies, they can get the new package, and we can update them on updated mapping there as well. So the Dodd Creek floodplain mapping project, again, it would have everything that the public needs to get informed or involved or see the updated mapping. It has the background information reports, all the relevant documentation. We've also put up there a Q&A form so that people can post their questions online. We can answer them and post them as well so people can track it. And it will also have links to any information sessions that we do have. So there's a link there to the April 16th session. So basically what I'm asking today is that the 2024 KCCA Watershed Enhanced Riverine Floodplain Mapping Project report be received and that the draft mapping be released for public notification in accordance with the staff report.
Question? But, so is there, like, obviously, if you remap, you're gonna restrict what people can do with their property and might diminish the value of that property, correct? Or no?
It will, yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, if it's floodplain related, so it will add additional restrictions.
Yeah.
There are abilities to continue to redevelop, but any new development may be prohibited.
So they have an appeal process on this or no? Is it, we just come on and we say, this is our opinion, we hear what you're saying, but we can't bend? How does that go?
Yeah, so I don't know fully that question, but it is a science-based study, like based on topography, and that's where the water flows. I don't believe there's an appeal process on it. Certainly like that large area that's new to the agricultural field to the left, it's a spill area. So it's not an area of high concern. So when we look at policies, spills areas are areas where water tends to overflow a high point and just flow out into low-lying fields. So it'll have restrictions that we can still work with landowners, but there will be prohibitions. New development in some of those.
Okay, thanks, thank you.
Have the new setbacks been applied from 120 to 30?
That only applies to wetlands. So in this case, there's no changes to the regulation based on the floodplain. Yeah.
I'll move it.
Seconder Sam. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, next, item C, Conservation Authority Act update. Who's taking this one?
Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So as part of changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, there's a number of deliverables that we must accomplish by the end of this year. One of the big ones is developing a watershed-based resource management strategy. And so that strategy will have our guiding principles and objectives, a summary of sort of studies and information that we use to do our day-to-day business, an overview of our programs and services, which we already seen for our inventory that we brought to you last year, a process for review, and it will also include sort of issues and risks analysis and some of the costs that may be required to address those things. So we're just starting the process of the strategy development. And so the first part of that is bringing to you the guiding principles and objectives. And if I get Elizabeth to forward. So we've developed 4 guiding principles for this strategy, and these are intended to be high-level strategic principles or values that basically is the approach that we take to doing business for the authority. So the first one is the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources is best implemented on a watershed basis. Integrated watershed management is a shared responsibility amongst conservation authorities, municipalities, government agencies, stakeholders, and citizens. Resource management decisions are integrated and transparent and take into consideration a broad range of community uses, needs, and values, including ecosystem needs. And that water and other natural resources are vital natural assets. They buffer the impacts of climate change, mitigate natural hazards, filter contaminants, assimilate waste, sustain biodiversity, and provide green spaces for recreation, among other community benefits. And then the next are the objectives, and these are basically set to help us achieve our mandate and provide the context for our programs and services. So the first one is developing and maintaining programs that will protect life and property from natural hazards such as flooding and erosion, to mitigate potential risk to drinking water sources, to assist in providing a sustainable and clean water supply for communities and ecosystems, to characterize groundwater and surface water resource systems and other natural resources of the watershed, to protect and maintain CAO lands for public safety, natural heritage protection, outdoor recreation, and socioeconomic health, to educate and engage the watershed community to promote awareness of natural hazards and watershed health and encourage the protection and restoration of land and water resources through stewardship action, and demonstrate organizational excellence through the effective and efficient delivery of our programs and services in an equitable and respectful manner. So what we're looking for today is the board's approval of these draft guiding principles and objectives. And then from there, we will go, basically part of this process is public consultation. So we will be posting these to the website that Elizabeth just showed to get public feedback on these. Once we have that, they'll be brought back to the board for sort of final approval, and they'll just help us to guide this strategy document. So the recommendation is before you, that the staff report on the Conservation Authorities Act update, watershed-based resource management strategy be received, and further that the draft guiding principles and objectives for the strategy be approved for posting to KCCA's website for public consultation.
Okay, questions and concerns, Lori?
Just a question on the engagement. Are you going to be tracking the engagement on the website, just like we do for some of our posts that we do on Facebook, for example?
Yes, for sure. I think as part of this, we'll track all comments received, anything like that will be part of this strategy development process.
Thank you. Just further, we'll get those numbers back with the report. Thank you very much.
Sam?
Just to say, that was really very good. I worry though that each individual conservation area is going through the same process, and this might be one of the better ones, so yeah.
I think that's positive reinforcement.
When you consider right now, this is Betson's busy time of the year, getting ready, plus the water festival on top, it's daunting, I would say.
Yeah, I'll move that. Yeah.
I think Lori, I can't remember. Lori and Sam, all in favor? Carried. Go ahead, John.
The second thing, we characterize groundwater and surface water resource systems and other natural resources to the watershed. They want to reduce it from 120 meters down to 30 while reinforcing recharge areas. Go left, turn right. They sort of doesn't go together.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay, we'll move down to item D, Lakeshore upgrade. Sorry. Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can stand for this one, guys. We have a few slides. Hopefully this one's a little more exciting than the regulation. But about a year ago, you may recall, we came to the board with a landowner donation from an executive from a landowner who lived adjacent to Lake Whitaker. We received a donation of $200,000 to be used for improvements towards Lake Whitaker. At that time, staff identified a need to improve the lakeshore camping area. The board gave us direction and approval to use some of those funds to retain an engineer to assist us in developing a grading plan or a drainage plan for the area due to some issues we were having, as well as to look at a relayout of the camping area. So myself and Michael Weiss is here today to speak to it as well. He's the Lake Whitaker coordinator, who runs the day-to-day operations of the campground. Over the last year, Mike and I have been working with Street Associates, and we believe we've developed a plan that best meets the needs of the area, increases and advances some revenue potential and some exciting project for the Conservation Authority. So I'm going to start by having Mike come up, take the floor and tell you a little bit about the existing conditions with the Lakeshore camping area.
All right, thank you to everybody who will share. First, I'm going to start off with just a little bit of a background about the Lakeshore campground section there. So just to orient yourselves, the red circle there, that's the Lakeshore section of the campground is up in Whitaker. So if you guys remember, we were up there last year for the walk. This kind of a section that we would have walked through to go down to the beach there. And that's the section we're talking about there. So currently this section has 40 campsites in there with a combination of 15 unserviced campsites. And then it's limited to just 10 camping, but also just a small pop-up. This particular section currently just bringing the camping season. We have a few issues and whatnot that we've been dealing with in that section down there. We've pretty heavy road gate down there to provide a reason for those trailers, but really not to tight in that section down there. The sites are a little bit smaller. Actually, when we were doing the calculation, the sites are roughly about a third the size of what some of the average site is for the rest of the campsites and the rest of the campground. Some drainage issues there through the roads washing out during heavy rainfall, as well as some of the sites that are flooding down there during those time periods as well. Unfortunately, that just seems to happen more frequently with these larger events and whatnot. That tends to be happening a little bit more. And some of the topography on there, some of the sites are not ideal space for the current topography of the site as well. And just dealing with some aging infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure there as well, the panel boxes and whatnot. And then due to some of these issues, the village is overcrowding down there. So some of the smaller red dots you see there, sites we actually have closed down just to stop the overcrowding and whatnot, and people talking to each other in a very tight section. And that's part of the reason we have some sites closed.
Can I ask a question here? What are people looking for in electrical in the campground? Like 15 amp is what, a toaster or charge batteries? 30 amp isn't much better, right? What do we offer? Like what is people?
So our sites, we have a combination of those 15 amp and 30 amp. 30 amp is the highest we offer at the campgrounds. And then as you'll see in some of the slides coming up and whatnot, we can give you them discussing that the 30 amp is kind of where some of the most interest lies, especially go back to the earlier report today as well, referencing how those 30 amp sites in that, so that bottom section, all the yellow and the bottom half, that top section, those are the 30 amp sites there that we're booked within the first.
So is that adequate for what people are asking for, 30 amp?
30 amp is generally adequate. We do have requests for more and whatnot, but generally speaking, standard can be operate 30 amp setting.
Generally, any trailer with just one air conditioner, 30 amps, plenty. It's when you get a big motorhome and with 2 or 3 air conditioners, with 50 amps becomes.
Those seem to be more prevalent.
But then I guess you need to deal with the situation and open up your windows if you.
And a lot of it's just pre-planning to just knowing what you can and can't do with your trailers. If you are on 50 amp site, then you just can't run something at the same time. It's kind of 30 amp does.
You know, the smart ass, but if you need more than 30 amps, can you call it camping?
It's a house.
Oh, based on what I've seen, the air conditioners themselves don't leave the trailer.
Yeah, you're right.
You need a satellite dish, I guess.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Holy smokes, okay.
Yeah, that's some of the background issues and whatnot there. There we go. So this project will give us some objectives of what we're trying to come up with for this project here. Starting off, just the desire of the funder is just to have a project that's going to maximize the benefit of the gift to the campground. That's one of the things. Addressing the drainage and maintaining the existing topography and construct controls through engineered solutions. Something that we're going to address those issues, working with Street Associates there. Create a new layout, which we'll get into, moving forward here as well, with some larger, more desirable campsites. And a little bit more comparable to the 5 sites that we find in the rest of the campground. Upgrading the electrical issues with some constraints there we'll get into as well, but where we can, upgrading the services. And also improving vehicular access, because again, with the road being as tight, so part of the plan is a little bit of modifications of some of the roadways to improve that access. Then also with attempting to utilize the existing trees that are there and finding a solution that works without having to destroy or cut down or damage the trees that are. Right, and then also just trying to introduce more modern camping trends. You can see moving forward here as well. We're looking at you know, some more of the glamping with the roof structures and whatnot. So we're getting something that's a little bit more comfortable for some people as well. That might not want to be in a tent is offering some structures like that as well. And then we're still just restricting the section to just transient camping instead of the long-term.
Can I ask a question? We don't allow portable generators, do we? Somebody, no, that's banned.
Yeah. So we had a power outage with that for only one weekend. That was a different story, but yeah,
Through the chair, if you're gonna do 730 amps, how much difference in cost is there to not do 820, but do all 30? Is there a big
I
cost?
think we'll get into that in a little bit moving forward here as well, but as part of the second.
That's fine.
Part of the budget, something else.
If you're there, you might as well do it.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
I can put it back.
And then just some of the constraints, just trying to stick within the budget of the very generous donation that we received there as well, so just making sure we stay within that budget. And then also just trying to maximize the electrical, what we got again, getting those 30 amps possibility that we're looking into down there. But also realizing that we are going to maximize, we can't exceed what we currently have just due to the constraints of what's available in that section. And then again, trying to work with maybe improving that drainage and the existing trees in that area, just using existing stuff as well. Next slide.
Yep.
Sorry. And then last we get into this one here, this is just kind of a little bit of some background factors within some public hearing decision as far as getting those 30 amp sites down in that section. This map here is just kind of an overall look at our transient campsites from last year. And the color scheme we have worked out here is the green sites are sites that have made either equal to or greater than what our seasonal rates are. And the purple ones are less than what our seasonal rates are. You'll notice that some of the dark green section, those ones, they were actually even accessible. Popular sites down there. So again, looking where the section of the light green is, that's again our section of the mostly predominantly 30 amp campsites there. And again, just kind of showing that seems to be the most popular spot. So trying to find any opportunity we have to increase 30 amp sites seems to be what people are looking for. So the opportunity we have to do that would definitely be a great opportunity. Good. So I'm going to touch on a little bit more information about that. So.
Well, thanks, Mike. So what Mike and I developed in consideration of the drainage plan is a new layout of the campsite area of bringing it to 22 campsites, which is consistent with the active campsites right now.
Sorry, Joe, it's not showing online, so I'm just relaunching. Sorry.
So with that, the proposal for 22 sites is to bring those sites a little larger and comparable to the other sites in the campground. I think that's part of the one issues that are in there. We are proposing a minor road relocation on that one section identified there to, just equal out the size of the sites, as well put in proper road width and turning radiuses that will allow camping trailers to now enter into the lakeshore camping area. And then proposing 4 sites for now along the southern limit that actually face the lake and bringing in cabins for roof accommodation rentals. So with this proposal, sorry, the clicker's not working. You can change the slide. So one of the main objectives that we started with this that guided that new layout is the drainage issues. This is some pictures Mike took on one of our more major storm events. You can see the water, just because of the grade, washes through, erodes the roads and the campsites. So we did go out to Street Associates where they assisted us in preparing a storm sewer plan. So a series of culverts and pipe sewer to safely outlet that water down to the lake. As you can see, it's not a straight line because we're trying to avoid tree roots and maintain a minimal damage to any of the vegetation in the area. So we have a storm sewer plan designed for a 5-year storm to help collect that water and safely outlet it to the lake. And on the next slide, we also have a series of berm swale to collect that water and safely put it into the sewer system. So we started with a full topographic survey and then the drainage solutions, and then worked around that with some of the existing vegetation of how we came up with that configuration and those size. As Mike mentioned, and to your comment, Jim, with the 30 amp, one of the biggest issues we have is all of the electricity feeding Lakeshore comes through Wood Lane from Dome Road. We're advised by our electrician that we've maximized our electrical capacity from Dome Road. So we don't have the ability to expand unless we're willing to spend significant costs and run new electricity down the road from Harrietsville. So we are bound by the maximum electric capacity in the campground is what we can use. So from the stats that Mike identified, obviously 30 amp is bringing in more revenue. We want to bring 30 amp into here if we can. The problem is if we were to make them all 30 amp sites, we'd probably lose half of the sites that we have there. So in consultation with the electrician, he believes that based on what we're proposing for the cabins, we only need a 20 amp service. So what we've developed here is a plan that we would at minimum update all the sites to 20 amp so that we can have a 20 amp service for the campers in the mean term, but it also sets us up for expansion. If these cabins work out really well and we want to commit more money for additional cabins, we can set them up on a 20 amp site easily. The other aspect is we want to try and get some 30 amps in there, but in consultation with our electrician, these cabins don't really fall into a category under the electrical code. They're not a residence, they're not an RV. He believes we can get 30 amps in there with the capacity we have, but his recommendation is to install the 20 amp service to the 4 lots with the cabins. Let's monitor the use for a year and then look at upgrading to 30 amp next year based on his results. So what we're proposing for year 1 is we would run electrical upgrades for the 4 cabin sites. We would do the relayout, but for the other sites, we'd rely on the current infrastructure, the current electrical capacity of 15 amp. That gives us the ability to monitor the use in those cabins, get the assurances from the electrical engineer, how many 30 amps can we put in here? And then second year, we would, if I get to the next slide, we'd do the 30 amp. So the total proposal, we're looking at 7 sites for 30 amp, and with that road relocation, they should be able to no problem put trailers on those sites. The other sites we would put as 20 amp that would continue to be used for tents and small trailers, but sets us up for future cabins if we want to continue to invest in bringing more cabins into the area.
Joe, when we were out there, I don't recall seeing washroom facilities. Are they nearby?
Yeah, so the washroom facility is, the existing washroom facility is right here.
Okay.
So this services the Lakeshore area, and then there's a 1-lane washroom and a poolside washroom within walking distance as well.
All right.
So that's what we're proposing or what we're putting our numbers to. So part of the cabins, Mike and I have been doing some online research and looking at local companies that provide cabins. We've gone out and looked at a bunch, and we are recommending that we move forward with the next slide, which is a Mountain Lake log bunkie from Peninsula Sheds. What we liked about these cabins is when we looked at them all, it's a rustic cabin aesthetic. It's a modular building, so we don't have to do anything. It comes built, they drop it on site. It doesn't require any interior finishings because it's all finished with pine board that looks nice. And it was competitive pricing. It was excellent pricing compared to other ones we looked at. When we were looking at cabins or bunkies, a lot of them are kits, so we have to build them ourselves. There's some that we have to do interior renovations and flooring to that add cost. So we believe those cabins are the best suited for the proposal. That company also provides log furniture. So we are proposing these as amenities in the cabins, that they would include a double bed, a twin bunk bed, waterproof mattress, an air conditioner, a mini fridge, and an outdoor barbecue and seating area so that we can provide those amenities to them. We have one cabin where we're proposing to show a queen bed, so for a 2-person occupancy as opposed to a 4-person. This is showing kind of the view of the area where we're planning to put those cabins. The 4 cabins along the south side are currently unserviced sites with very much overgrowth with trees, so they're not actively rented. So this is an area we believe that we can tuck those cabins in with maybe some pruning, but we can maintain the vegetation for privacy. And all 4 cabins will have an excellent view of the lake. So those cabins will actually view the lake so they can sit on the porch and see the lake in the morning.
Are those cabins elevated?
Sorry?
You elevate them or put them on foundation?
They're sitting on 6x6 cross beams on a gravel pad foundation.
This is a joke. No yurts?
No errors.
Oh.
The other aspect we'd be looking at is to recognize the donors, and similar to what the authority did for the millionth tree. We've spoke with the executive of the donation that's happy with a rock with an engraved saying, acknowledging Sam Bennett and his generosity to Lake Whitaker. So with all those factors, we believe we can do that with the $200,000 budget. We have $10,000 for engineered drawings, $100,000 for drainage grading works, electrical servicing, $85,000 to get 4 cabins with all the amenities. Some money for the engraving and a minor bit of contingency. So we've done some preliminary analysis with contractors as well as with streets that we believe we can do that within the current budget.
Gotcha. Can I ask a question on there is no drainage today, is there? Really?
It's all purpose.
Yeah, so this will make a huge improvement. It'll move the water off ground quicker. Yeah.
And hopefully generate more revenue based on the electrical updates and the drop of the cabins. So we tried to do a conservative, quick, what is the increased revenue potential? So right now, the average 5-year revenue for Lakeshore is around $40,000 annually. We believe in year 1, relying on those stats that Mike spoke about, where we know 30 amps bringing this much money, 15 amps bringing this much money. We estimate that we can increase the revenue by approximately $23,000 in the first year, and as high as doubling the revenue of an additional $40,000 in the second year by introducing those 30 amp sites. By setting up the electricity for future cabins, we have the possibility, subject to funding, to bring in more cabins if this is successful. And with those cabins, we believe we could almost increase revenue by $100,000 for the Lakeshore camping here.
Lori?
You may have this going a little bit later. Loving everything so far, occupancy.
Yeah, so with that, we're anticipating that the standard rustic cabin would be an occupancy of 4. So it comes with a double bed and it comes with a twin bunk bed.
My apologies, date, occupancy date.
Oh, we're looking, if the board supportive, to have shovel in the ground at the end of this season for cabin rentals that would start in May 2025.
Thank you.
So other considerations, sorry.
Sorry, through the chair, is there any consideration for people with disabilities? In a wheelchair or something, or sorry?
That's a good point. That walking facility is accessible. That's something we haven't factored into that we can look at as additional considerations, because there would be one step, but we could look at accessible considerations in terms of a walkway to it, maybe a ramp onto the deck. But it's a good point. We haven't got there yet.
No, that's fine. No.
But yeah, so, and I'll add that to our additional considerations. We still have to look at insurance, staffing, maintenance of those equipment, operations, so cleaning, off-season storage. We still have to develop policies for occupancy, whether we'll allow pets, check-in, check-out times, fees. We've already done a quick fee comparison. A lot of similar cabin rentals in our areas are around $100 to $150 a night, so averaging around $130, and then marketing and promotion. So these are things that we would be developing throughout the year when we look at next year's policies and bring to the board at the end of the year prior to implementation. So in terms of timelines, we're hoping to get the board's endorsement of this proposal today. Want to get Mike going out to collect quotations on grading works with our purchasing policies so that we can be ready to put shovels in the ground in September or October when this season campground closes. Bring the cabins in November or December and be ready for rental of those cabins for May 1st, 2025, and then complete the electrical upgrades in September, October of 2025 once we have those results.
Mm-hmm. Joe, I think we talked about this on our road trip, but obviously we have a shortage of height. And I think we talked about, so is that even a consideration? I know, I'm not sure what happened with the budget yesterday. I know there was talk about alternative energy, might be some money there. Mind you, the problem, I want to give it to us.
It was factored into this proposal. Mike and I, over the last, probably pre-COVID, have had the electrician out several times trying to look at what solutions do we have in this capacity. We haven't really got great advice back on solar for that, because there are ways to kind of solar panels, to collect energy. We haven't gone too far with that. I don't know if it would change much of that other than the ability of getting more 30s, but we talked about over the years with our electrician and haven't really landed on anything that's we're further forward now.
But maybe something in the future, but not right now, is
Yes.
keep tinkering on.
So that's the proposal. We're happy to answer any more questions, but we're just looking for that plan to be approved as executive camp board.
Go ahead, Sam.
I'll move that.
Seconder, John? Any further discussion?
No, just a comment. I really like the plan. Excellent. Looks really good.
My wife's gonna be all over one of those.
Not John,
What's that?
but not John.
Oh, I think it's great. She's all on a trailer back in there.
I can see a lot of elderly people being very enticed.
Mr. Pudding,
No, I was just gonna anticipate that there probably won't be a need to advertise, to promote. Because I think internally you're gonna have enough
if you put a satellite in,
enthusiasm to be able to fill it within your first year.
if you put satellites in, we could have a weekend. What do you call it, treat for the board?
It's gonna handle that. Yeah, okay. Anyway, any further questions? Pardon me? All in favor?
Comment here, no golf course yet? Like, what do you want on?
Future planning.
All right, move on to Joe's report regarding planning regulations.
And the final report is just looking for receipt of the staff advance report with permits issued by staff and planning act applications.
Seconder? Yeah, Frank, and who wants that? Aaron,
Oh, there is a seconder, okay.
all in favor? Carried. Okay, we gotta go back up to our delegation regarding the Dan Patterson rental and Lane County Association. We outweighted Jeremy, he couldn't stick around.
Picking out phone, isn't he?
Sam?
I'm gonna recuse myself from this because I didn't hear his whole presentation.
Okay, sure.
It's right there.
That's right.
Go ahead, Jim.
Could we get a quick update from Elizabeth?
Well, I think Elizabeth needs to be,
Yeah, just so we know, I mean, we're here in trouble and
there's just two sides to the story.
then it's the story. Anyway, thank you. He didn't say much.
You can sit and listen, Sam.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to leave, but I will stay and listen as long as I can, but I think I'm not gonna vote on it.
All right, sure.
Just I don't want any,
So London Canine Association has rented Dan Patterson Dogs Show since about 2018, so for a number of years. The fee associated with the bookings has been unchanged at $1,800 for that time span. For 2 years, they've been advised that price increases are coming and their rental agreement is renewed on a yearly basis. Throughout that time, the agreement has consistently allowed for 10 unserviced camping sites to allow organizers to provide nightly security. And that is consistent with other groups and associations that rent Dan Patterson. I did meet with Jeremy Brown and Mary Ann Levogianis on or about February 22nd to discuss any opportunities to reduce the fees for 2024. The main reason for his fee or the association's fee increase was the use of the dog park. And through our 2024 fees, we did introduce a fee for use of the dog park. When people are using it in association with an event at Dan Patterson, it causes us to close to the public. It's an inconvenience to the public and we want to discourage it. The price, if the dog park is not closed for the event of Dan Patterson, does bring the dog association's overall price increase for 2024 down to about $2,580. This includes overnight camping of 10 unserviced sites. However, Mr. Brown was unwilling to deter from his desire to have 25 campsites at Dan Patterson for the extent of the show, 10 service sites and 15 unserviced sites. During the discussion that I had with Mr. Brown to explore ways that we could accommodate the fee increase in 2024, it was revealed that he had gone above and beyond his agreement and not offered camping to others down at Dan Patterson in 2023 and collected fees for that. He had advertised for serviced and unserviced sites and collected fees. During that conversation, I wasn't aware that camping was being allowed in that nature. And so I did advise Mr. Brown that I would discuss with staff his ongoing request for camping of that nature to be down at Dan Patterson. And then I would get back to him as to whether or not I thought we could pursue an agreement for 2024. I met the next day with staff, and I believe that is the meeting that Mr. Brown is referring to. When I met with staff to discuss his requests. I met with staff, and staff were adamant that they did not allow or were aware that Mr. Brown was allowing or advertising or collecting fees for camping down at Dan Patterson in this manner. It was only ever agreed to 10 unserviced sites down there. And so for these reasons, I don't believe that allowing Mr. Brown down there in 2024 is no longer an issue of a price increase. It's an issue that we cannot accommodate his request down at Dan Patterson. It's not meant for overnight camping of that size or nature. And it's very well that his association or his use of Dan Patterson has outgrown what we are able to offer him, either for price or for the safety of the facility down there.
And I guess I can add with my several conversations with Mr. Brown. He is unwilling to change. He insists on the extra sites. And I know for a fact, since my daughter and son-in-law rented a trailer to somebody down there and I had to deliver it because they were away. The ground was wet. It was crowded with trailers. And when those trailers had to be moved after rain for 2 days, it was worse. Pulling that trailer out, so. And he doesn't seem to want to budge, but the bottom line, he's pretty much set his way that suggested, well, the camp's around just around the corner, why aren't they going up there? And he says, well, it's a long ways. Well, it's no further than going to the hotel in St. Thomas, so give me a break. Anyway, Lori?
I've had a conversation with Mr. Brown as well. But the thing that stood out for me this morning was he was going to take a check that he brought, did not inform the authority that he collected money, and stated he had a check for $850, which he is going to turn around and rip up if he doesn't get his way today. Could you talk a little bit about that? $850 that he says he is.
At that meeting that I had with him, that's when this issue of additional campsites down at Dan Patterson came up, and he revealed to me that he had collected fees for camping last year, and that he had collected about $850. He was prepared to give me a check that day for $850. He wrote it out and provided it to me. I said I wasn't aware of any arrangements that staff had for that I would talk to staff, and that if we weren't going to pursue an agreement for 2024, I would destroy the check. When I called him on Friday, I said, I don't think it's in our best interest to continue a relationship for 2024, and I have destroyed the check. So that check has been destroyed. I did not accept payment for something that staff were not aware of or had approved.
And had a delay of its knowledge of those collections.
And delay of knowledge of collection.
A whole collection year.
Jim, Francis?
So when I talked to him, his concern right off the top was, I've gone from 2,800 to 5,400, they've even tripled my rates. And that's why I pressed him there on what he gave us here. There was no triple rates in here, 5,400, I don't know where he's getting that from. And then when Todd tried to ask him, how would you like to resolve it? He didn't want to resolve it, he just
kept talking.
kept talking. Todd just wants, how do you like to see it resolved? I don't see the 5,400, is that the rating?
The $5,000 range fee would come into effect if he wanted to rent Dan Patterson for that length of time. And that's where we had negotiations with long-term agreements in place for 2024, because we realized that's a hike. But we wanted them to really think, do they need the dog park to run their event, or do they not? if they need it, there's gotta be a price associated to
Yeah,
it. So
that's-
that was the first thing that we took off when we had that meeting with him and said, you don't need the dog park. We've already reduced your price down to 2,600.
Well, the problem I had with him was, when I called him back, he said he had talked to Todd, to Lori, to Grant, and I said, basically, I said, from what I'm hearing from Elizabeth, they tried to work it out with you, but from here on in, I'm really done talking to you about it. You've involved our chair, you deal with our chair, and that's all I said to him. I didn't want to spend back and forth. I made no comment to him except, you've talked to the chair, you deal with the chair now. Don't play games calling every counselor, every board member, and try and get someone to say, yes, we'll do this. Well, no commitment from me, and I'm sure there was no commitment from anybody. So, but anyway, I left it with the chair to deal with. Of course, he came today and still I couldn't resolve it. What do you want? Well, no, tell us how you want us to resolve. Anyway, so.
So just to reiterate, you offered for that period of time, but 10 camping sites which are unserviced.
That's correct.
You can't use the dog park. $2,500 is what we said. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
$2,580.
All right, so that's, I think that's reasonable. And we offered the 10 campsites for their security.
Site.
And that's, like you said, Grant, probably wet.
That year, like last year,
Yeah, okay.
but you want staff for security, I can understand that to some extent.
So if the dog park is open, can they not use it, but the public can use it as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've made a reasonable offer. And this guy, the stuff he's given us is, I don't know why he's even doing this. He's not looking for a resolution. Difficult to deal with?
Yeah.
Okay.
that-
Has been.
Like in my phone conversation was one or two of which I was in Florida. They answered them. I didn't want to, but you know, when you go a half hour, you're beating a dead horse and.
Yeah.
You know, 3 conversations later, so you have the option to come to the board.
So is this guy lying about the fact that the board turned him down? Because,
There's no there.
yeah, so that never even happened.
I don't remember it, that's what I do.
Yeah, I missed
I don't
one
know anything
meeting.
about that, but talk to
Just
Grant.
to clarify on behalf of Mr. Brown, I do believe he's referring to the meeting that I told him I was having with staff to hear their side of it. As a meeting of the board, if that was a miscommunication, but I did meet with staff after meeting with him to get feedback from staff and then went back to him with the final decision of staff.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether I'm misunderstanding this, but has he already gone ahead and sort of sold this event out at a certain cost to himself or his organization? And this is part of his reasons for being upset, because now he's feeling that, you know, he's already gone and laid all this out, but now the fees are going up. Is that part of his argument, which is not our responsibility, but
My understanding from the conversation I had with him is that he's already advertised the event for 2024
Right.
at Dan Patterson.
without
Without an
having,
agreement signed.
exactly,
Okay.
okay.
So just hopefully one last comment. If we stay status quo, and then all of a sudden Joe goes down there and there's 50 campers down there, what happens?
That's the issue because we don't have staffing to deal with it. Because.
Well, it's just a case of driving down, having a look and see.
Yeah.
If there's
And I
more
know
than
you can
10.
do that, but then how do you remove?
Well, that's my question. What do we do? Do we have any authority to move them out? And how do you do it? Anyway,
Mr. Chair, this, I
it
guess,
sounds like there'll be campers coming in more than the 10.
yes.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, this is the issue that we've identified, that in 2023, that the area was packed. Staff were informed that it was just day camping that was happening. They've done further investigation and realized that it was not day camping. It was advertised, fees were collected. And it's definitely more than the 10 unserviced sites as per the agreement. My concern in terms, and that's why I'm saying this is not a fee issue. This is a use of the grounds issue and a safety issue. We asked them to go through Central Elgin, special events thing. If we're not being honest about what's happening down there and what the use of the grounds is, it's an emergency personnel and a safety issue. And I'm not willing for a reduced, a reduced rate on top of it to take that risk on for the authority.
So I would think if we stay status quo, we have a plan in place and inform him, if there's more than 10 campsites, this is what's going to happen if we have the authority to do it. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you can say no and then fine, you'll just say good. All of a sudden you're gonna have campsites didn't care.
You can certainly say that to him, but again, I understood him to say today that he's interested in having it for $1,800. And my previous conversations with him is that he wants 25 campsites. So to me, saying that we're going to offer him 10 sites is not going, that's where I came to the conclusion with the staff. Us going back with 10 sites at $2,600 was not going to meet his requirements either way, and wasn't going to meet ours. That's my suggestion, he go out and find an accommodation that works for him.
I'm sure, but mine, I think we need a plan to say, if you're more than 10, this is, would you lock the gates? They can't get in there.
I was just gonna say, I think the recommendation is not to entertain the event,
There's not what?
not to entertain the event, so
Yeah.
not to execute agreement, and he has to find a new location. So that issue won't happen.
On the basis of past violations.
And past violations, and that we can accommodate 25 campsites down there.
But I think that he's kind of taken a step in his own direction, and that's not the responsibility of the board. He's kind of gone beyond his, he didn't have a contract in place, am I right about that, for 24?
That's correct.
Okay, so then he's taken that next step from his own volition. So, but he wants the board to bend so that he can be accommodated. That's my understanding of what he's asking.
So sorry, go ahead.
Can we ask for a deposit? And then if there's more than 10 campsites, you lose your deposit?
No, that's
I don't
not the
think we
issue, though, I think, is it?
No. Well, if you look at this guy, he's, to me, been dishonest. He rents the site, but takes control of it and does what he wants to do, and then how do we enforce that? So staff has said, based on what he's doing and what he has said, I don't think we should entertain the event.
Staff is giving you a recommendation, we can go with the recommendation, you can move a different recommendation, but I have to agree with staff, but in the conversations I've seen with them, there's been no movement.
It's been challenged. Like if he's running in 5 years, was it just a challenge the 1 year?
That we know of.
Yeah. So the other 4 years, they sailed along, the Conservation Authority collected the fees. We had a little bit of income on that property, and it didn't. Well, yeah, that.
We don't know, right?
Yeah, but if you had.
We don't know. I do think probably it's safe to say that the event has grown in popularity, and I think that's where the tipping point is for, especially for 2023. And we're not talking about, tents when we're talking about what they're looking for camping. There's RVs rolling in there.
Yeah.
And setting up camping.
So if we asked them to have a certain amount, like if they had 25 people camping down there last year, we said, listen, the 15 of those have to look at Dalewood, which is probably the closest one. But if we saw that there's 15 sites that were booked there, and had something in place where we know there's only 10 folks camping down there, which is what you guys are comfortable with. And then maybe do a security deposit that ensures that other stuff happens, but we still have the income at KCCA. It's nice to have events down there, and I don't think there's a lot of events that happen there. It'd be nice to have some events down there and also have the income, because of the challenges with the income. So just putting that out there.
We can toss this in 5 different directions, and this is an operational thing too. I'd be happy to hear what your recommendation is to the board, what you think we should be doing.
My recommendation, again, is this is not a fees issue. This is an operational issue. It's a safety concern for staff to have this event down there. My recommendation is that we part ways with the dog association.
I'd be happy to support that if you. I think that's good, get it right off, I think, because we're gonna go in all different directions on what we should be doing with this. Operational is your operation, so.
Just before we vote, though, he's not open to an either or. Either you follow the rules, or you can't have your event here.
Mr. Chair, to Sharon, through my discussions with him, so thus far, no, that's not the case.
Just one more question then, if this is an operational issue, is this something that the board is required to vote on? Because if it's operational, it's not we're not operations.
But it can come from the chair.
Unfortunately, he's come to the board
Yeah.
because he doesn't like staff's answer, so now he's left it up to us to decide and whether we support staff or.
Staff's answer, was it in writing or just verbal?
No, it was just verbal to him.
Oh.
He did ask immediately to speak to the chair and vice chair, and I provided that information.
And I said this, stayed the line and said, you need to abide by what staff is asking for. If you're not willing to abide by it, then you've got a big issue. In the 3 conversations I had, he had no intention of changing what he was doing.
No,
Okay,
I'd be hard pressed to fight operational, so.
Where, sir?
No, I would just kind of reinforce the safety issue as well.
Well, it's the liability issue of having 25
For sure.
big things set up on a thing where it's not even supposed to really be any camping. If there's 10 people allowed to be there, that's one thing, but if there's 25 plus and just disregarding, that's not, well, it's not a campsite.
And a failure to inform.
Yeah.
So, we don't even need to make it a motion, it's just operational. Elizabeth Ballpark can take care of that, we've discussed it, but I
I
think.
believe staff are asking for.
Yeah.
so put it out there. The motion is not to entertain him. Do we have to say stuff around it? Do we have to say why, or that we're just not prepared to entertain it?
We support the chair. Liz,
That you support the direction of staff.
Okay, there's,
Not to entertain the booking this year.
okay, so that's the motion, and I will move it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, I support Elizabeth and George.
Any further discussion?
Well, it's a good event, you know, my inclination was, we would like to entertain this, but based on all the other information, there's.
Safety and security.
Yeah, right on.
I think the conversation would be different if he was willing to bend a little, you know. I mean, most negotiations, there's a little give and
It
take.
was not very flexible today, was it?
No, exactly not. I mean, I agree with Todd, you know, that it's nice to have those fees, but, if you indicated last year was wet and there was damage to the property, then that's on us, right?
Well, it's not just that, it's the way everything was parked in there. There's no one leaving once everybody's in. So the first one goes, but.
I'm heading to the election, but I'll vote.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
So any further comments? Have moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, unopposed, motion is carried.
It's gonna be USS Park.
I wish you'd been flexible, you know, if we'd been flexible.
You know, the same sort of thing came up in Manchester over and, conditions and so rough. After, we have to draw that in.
Maybe it's a recommendation that they go and see.
We gotta keep chugging line here, because I'm gonna be for 1 o'clock, this was Todd.
Okay.
So, do we need to go into closed session?
Can we adjourn this meeting, please?
Motion.
Sharon seconds.
Yeah.
All in favor? Carried.